Hey there, welcome to our Steelers show. I'm Chris Pugh. Got Joe Frost with me. The shock of the night, and he'll be back later for some of our other segments. Paul Yanchek is not here for the Steelers show.
Yeah, man, we're just trading weeks.
Yeah. Well, after Kenny Pickett led the team to a win, you thought, Paul would be here waving his flags,
Right? But that's what I thought.
Hey, the family got in the way, which is okay. That's a good excuse.
Family.
There's nothing wrong with that. Very kind of weird week for the NFL in general. I mean, we like the NFL. It was a horrible Monday night. Buffalo Bills, Cincinnati Bengals, good game. One of the better Monday night matchups of recent years, late in the year. But Damar Hamlin, the safety for the Bills, he's a Pittsburgh guy too. Keysport, I believe he grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
He was a safety for the Pitt Panthers too. I listened to a podcast with Ramon Foster, the former offensive lineman there. He thought Hamlin came to some practices. He was like, I think Hamlin might be in one of her practices when he was 12, because he knew some of the players. Apparently, he knew Mike Tomlin pretty well. So Tomlin talked about him during a press conference. So there's a lot of ties. I saw a tweet from Hamlin where he said, hey, if the Bills aren't playing, I'm a Steelers fan. As we all know by now, he collapsed. Apparently, he took a hit near the chest, kind of a long shot, but that caused a heart attack. And I don't know, man. I mean, let's start here. I like football, but Monday was a rough night, man. I kind of thought back to when Ryan Shazier had the spinal injury.
Mm-hmm. And on that same field.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt empty. I mean, the Steelers came back, ended up winning the game. But, man, here was what was interesting. The guy literally died. He was resuscitated.
Right.
Should the Steelers have ended that game with Shazier? I mean, Shazier was alive, but it was a very horrible injury. I don't know. I'm thinking back at that going, isn't that kind of weird they finished that game?
Slightly. But, that's the difference between life and death. I mean, he did not need to be resuscitated on the field.
Right.
So it's just the extent of the paralysis that was possible, or the concussion, or whatever it was going to be that he had. He was still alive. So, yeah.
Well, they asked Ramon Foster about that, and he said, how'd you guys keep playing? And he said in the podcast, I guess the fact that Shazier gave a thumbs up reassured the players. Where, you knew bad stuff was happening. You knew he probably wouldn't play again.
Sure.
But the fact to give a thumbs up was like, okay, he's going to be okay physically. I mean, he'll be with us later, where it wasn't necessarily a life or death thing.
Right.
It's just crazy. I mean, it was just wild.
And I think there's been a lot of backlash on the NFL for the choices that they made and how long it took them to make certain choices and whatever else. There's just so many implications that come into the whole thing, and obviously, a man's life is in the conversation, and that's of utmost importance at that moment. But trying to, in a crisis situation, think about all of the ramifications of what was going to happen if we suspend this game, if we try to pick it up later, when are we going to pick it up later? Like, there's questions that are still happening now. And there's so many people, armchair, whatever, not even quarterbacks, just armchair people sitting in armchairs, thinking that they would have made better choices, better than all of the officials who were there at the moment. And, it's easy to look back and say you didn't make the right choices, but, they were working in very difficult circumstances to try to do something that was decent, that was fair, that was, reflective of what was really important at the time. So,
Roger Goodell could get information a lot easier than you and I can.
Sure.
But at the same time, think about when that incident first happened. No one sat right away and said, oh, it's a heart attack. They're trying to help him out. I mean, it looked serious. It looked very dangerous and everything. Mm-hmm. But no one could have known that right away. So it's not like Goodell could say, oh, heart attack, let's call the game.
And here's the protocol we have set up for heart attacks on the field.
Well, I think, too, also you got to look at and say, okay, did he have just a serious injury? So you say, could you play on? Here's the other thing, too. Nationally televised game. Now, again, I can't believe they really thought about extending the game. I just think there's so much other, like you were saying, so much other stuff that goes into it. It's a national television broadcast. So what do? They can advise ESPN on what to talk about. And ESPN did a really great job in a horrible situation where they talked about without bludgeoning it to death and everything. But here's the other thing. You had, I don't know how many seats Cincinnati holds. You got all those guys at the football game. Everyone was excited, everything else. Here's one thing, and I've kind of been busy over the past couple of days, so I haven't read a ton of coverage from that game. Did they refund tickets?
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
And that's got to be something you talk about. So, yeah, I mean, I do stuff in the PR industry. Some of my PR fellow mates wrote a lot of articles ripping the NFL for it. I don't think the NFL looked great in it. But again,
I don't know how you come out of it looking great. There's nothing you could have done right. There was no right answer.
Well, we were talking about this with Peter earlier in the night. There was a guy from Detroit, and let me look him up as I'm talking, just to give more context. He literally was the last person to literally die during a game.
Mm-hmm.
Something similar happened. They took him off the field. Chuck Hughes. He was a 28-year-old wide receiver. He collapsed. They wheeled him off the field. They were resuscitating him. They took him in the locker room. They took him to the hospital. He ended up dying. So, I mean, he didn't necessarily die on the field, but he died from a situation that happened on the field.
Right.
They played the last minute of the game.
They finished the game.
Right. Now, he wasn't dead at the time.
Right.
It was like, wow, a serious injury.
Right. He went to the hospital just like Shazier went to the hospital, just like dozens of other people with, ankle or leg or whatever injuries. You finish the game. I mean,
I think the NFL was smart enough to realize, even from the start, we probably can't continue the game. But before you say, game's postponed or suspended or whatever, you've got to have some discussions. And I think that's why it took them a while. I don't know that for certain, but I got to think that, because if not, the NFL looks really bad.
Yeah. I mean, I come from a theater background. That's my world. I taught theater for a whole bunch of years and have done dozens and dozens of plays and whatever else. And we're known for the phrase, the show must go on, and going out there and doing things. And despite of all of the bad situations and whatever else. And I've done that. I've had some very difficult circumstances in which I went out and did the show that I was supposed to do. Obviously, it's a different level of commitment. I understand that. But there's been a handful of times where it's like, you know what? We just need to suspend this for right now. We don't have the same ramifications of suspending a show and coming back the next night and doing it. You don't have that opportunity with the NFL. But I have on several occasions made the call to say, look, we're just gonna shut this down tonight.
Nothing really good, you guys. You guys might continue the podcast. Like, I'll be laying on the ground, and you guys will just podcast on.
We'll just keep podcasting, and every once in a while, we'll write in the private chat on the thing. Is Chris okay? I don't know. Yeah. Like, we just got to keep going.
Wife comes down. He's dead. Why didn't you say anything?
Well, because even if we logged out, it would still be recording your body sitting in that chair. Yeah, there's nothing we could do about it.
Yeah. So again, there's going to be a decision made. I'm checking Twitter. I mean, we're taping this 10:15 on a Wednesday night. I don't see any definite decisions made. I mean, again, most importantly, let's hope the kid survives it, and we hope, Damar Hamlin makes it. And I think I'll deference to him. They're not going to start sitting there making a lot of decisions before, they see if he's okay or not. Just doing one final check to make sure there's no breaking news on that.
I did find it very interesting, in a circumstance like this where nobody really knows what to do and nobody has the answers. It's been interesting to me how many different places, different figures, and whatever else have really leaned into prayer for Damar Hamlin, for his family, for the teammates, for the whatever else, for the Bills Mafia, for whoever needs comforting at this particular point, when this is not something that's talked about in sports very, very often. So that was interesting to me that was something that people turn to even live on air as journalists. That was an interesting circumstance to me.
Yeah,
I was glad to see it, and I'll say that. I don't want to be not saying anything about anything, but it was fascinating to me as a viewer to see that was the response in a circumstance where we just really don't know what to do, and there's not much to do. Honestly, you're a fan watching something at home, and thousands of miles away. This circumstance is happening, and we're just all living this time together and dealing with a lot individually, but then finding ways of coming together collectively and lifting things up in prayer.
Yeah, were you referring to Dan Orlowski?
Orlowski. Yeah.
Yeah. According to his Twitter, he's a believer, and it was really cool to kind of see him say that. Now,
according to his prayer, he's a believer. Good grief.
Yeah. I'm not getting into the hey, I don't know if you're saved or not discussion, but I don't know his faith, but no, it's good. And I tweeted about it, and somebody's like, well, you can pray to your fake God. Look, we find peace for that. And in a horrible situation like Damar Hamlin, hey, if you're choose to turn to faith, don't criticize that. I mean, we're all trying to find our ways of dealing with
you're perfectly capable of praying to your nothing. That's fine too.
Yes.
If that helps you 2 times like this, that's on you. That's great.
All right. So again, prayers to Damar Hamlin. 24. We had this conversation earlier in the year about Dwayne Haskins. Too young. And again, I say this, I'll throw my other faith element to it. Life's short, man. I mean, I turn 48 tomorrow, and I could sit here and say, "Oh, I'm going to live till I'm 80." I mean, maybe this is my last year. Life's short. We don't know when our life is up, and honestly, think about your faith. I mean, I'm not going to tell you how I believe, but it becomes a big deal, especially when you're facing it in your life. So, all right. Well, let's kind of on that note, let's turn our attention to something else. But we're a Steelers show, and very notable Steelers game. Definitely want to start by talking about Hamlin. Man, Steelers, I don't know if this was their best win of the year. If it wasn't their best, it was close to it. They beat the Ravens. Messy at times. No Lamar Jackson. I don't put a lot of stock in Tyler Huntley. So, I mean, I wouldn't call this a franchise-defining win or anything, but, hey, they pulled it out. Very good running game. They ran the ball well. They defended the run well. I mean, they got gashed by the Ravens. Yeah, 5-man front. Very interesting coaching move. It worked out. And, I'm not ready to call Kenny Pickett the next Pat Mahomes after what happened. But, man, he made the plays where he needed to.
But that came up in the announcing.
Yeah, well, Chris Collinsworth, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, if we disagree with Chris Collinsworth so much when he says things that are derogatory, we need to not buy into him when he's saying things that are complimentary.
Well, if you look at that play, and he had a couple other plays in that drive like that. I mean, I thought the Steelers' offensive line overall was really well. But, Baltimore gets good pass rush on. You're not going to keep them off your quarterback the whole game. And Pickett was running for his life, and he made a couple of those throws on the run. And again, I'm not willing to annoy him, Dan Marino, for those throws, but he's gained, he's progressed. We got a chat going between the three of us, and I still think there's a lot of scheme issues with it. I think Pickett could develop into a really good quarterback. But I'm like, hey, you're playing Baltimore. It's a really good defense, but let's score a little bit more points. I mean, we're scoring 13 to 20 every game. And I'm like, and Joe, I'm not even sure if that's going to work this Sunday against Cleveland. I mean, I think the Steelers win against Cleveland, but for the love of whatever, score some more points. They're not good enough to score 42 points a game or whatever, but don't score 10 to 13 every game. I mean, we got to pick it up a little bit here.
But they have scored in the 30s. I mean, it's happened. So it's not that that's impossible to happen. It's you are playing a very good defense. Right. Defense that is going to the playoffs, even though they may not go very far. Yeah, so there's still a reality there. And also, if you look at what the way that the game, maybe should have played out, maybe it plays out different if this didn't happen in the first half. But that really terrible unsportsmanlike against Cam Hayward. Yeah. That was nonsense, and it led to 7 points that wouldn't have been on the board.
Right.
So the margin for victory was probably a little bit bigger than it should have been. That was a little slimmer than it should have been because of questionable officiating calls.
I just don't put all the pressure on the defense. The defense is carrying them on their back, and Pickett's so young. I'm not bashing Pickett or anything. They almost had 200 yards of rushing. I mean, isn't there like some metric that says if you have 200 yards of rushing, you should score this many points?
No. If that metric existed, it'd probably be under 20.
Right.
Because if you're rushing all of the time, you're eating clock.
Yeah.
And so you're not getting a high scoring game by having a solid rushing outing. So, I mean, that's the game that we've talked about committing to. Tomlin is obviously very committed to the run. And so I don't know if Pittsburgh for a while is going to be that team that puts up a bunch of points. I think they're built to have these, slobber knockers with the AFC North and come out with field goal victories. I mean, that's the way this team has been built. And that's the game they're playing in a league where there are other people who are putting up 42 and 50 points a game.
I just go back to the scheme. And
that's terrible.
They're running the ball a lot better. And again, and you're right, when you run a lot, you're shortening the game. I totally get all of that. But I'm like, there's got to be more points put up. And I know Pickett's so young, he's learning everything. I just think I go back to play calling. It's unimaginative at times. Paul's here with us now. And I think,
speaking of people who really hate the scheme that the Pittsburgh Steelers are using, as if he felt it in the universe somewhere. He's like, I need to chime in. Here's Paul Yanchek.
Well, I think Paul shared the video. I saw online too of like Pickett before the final drive. He was kind of looking at the sideline like, hey, I can't hear you. And it was almost like,
I'll hear you. I think what he was probably saying is like, what you're saying is nonsense, and I'm going to ignore this. This is useless to me.
And look at even like the last year or two of Ben's career.
Yeah.
There are times where even when Ben wasn't that great, where it kind of was like, okay, in the second half, they went no huddle, and now they scored some points. And now
Yes.
And I think, again,
it is emblematic of something that as soon as they go no huddle and it's going too quickly for them to get call plays from the sideline, somehow everything goes much, much better.
You notice how when after Pickett lost connection with Canada, that he didn't have to do whatever calculus formula on his wristband to figure out what play it was. They put it together, and I will
playing backyard ball.
A massive Kenny Pickett fan, knowing how well we were running the ball all day. When I saw him dropping back to pass in that last drive, I'm like, oh, is this a good idea? And bang, it was. Tick-tock, it's Kenny o'clock.
I just want to see him with a better scheme to see if that he can help grow more.
Yeah,
and I'm hoping
that only comes from a different offensive coordinator.
This is what this Malik Willis.
No, thank you. I'm good.
Well, here's a bad situation. I mean, Their offensive line's playing better. Their running game is alive again. What's the chances? And, with everything going off with the Damar Hamlin thing and everything, who knows what the Steelers' playoff chances are. I would just be happy. Beat the Browns. You're 9-8. You win 7 of the last 9 games. I'm happy. Great into the year. I'm fine with that. But, man.
It's all we can control.
Well, but here's the bad thing. I wonder if in the front office they're like, wow, what a turnaround. Steelers aren't turnover machines as much anymore. They're more proficient. Let's keep Matt Canada. Like, I don't want the Steelers to go 0-17.
They're watching the games just like everybody else is.
I hope
the only thing that will save Canada's job, I believe, is if he masterminds the offense to a Super Bowl win this season. I think that is the only thing that's going to say, well, I guess we need to bring him back.
I guess we give him one more year. We got to see how this really is going to play out. Yeah, and it would have to be evident that it's a call, like being
clear
able
that
to
the
score in the first half.
Kenny.
Like that kind of thing. Scoring touchdowns in the first half, we don't do that much.
Yeah.
So, if the scheme were to able to bring some touchdowns in the first half, that'd be fantastic.
So the question is, what do we have to do Sunday to create enough radio interference so that there's something wrong with the connection between Canada up in the booth and Pickett's helmet? What lines
snip, snip. Just take the batteries out of the receiver.
Send over the area.
Yeah. Oh, we're out of double A's. Oh,
here's
what a bummer.
Here's better than the Browns. I don't have any doubt. If they can't score enough points, Deshaun Watson threw 3 touchdowns in the second half against the Commanders. I think the Steelers are better than the Commanders. I'm not afraid of that. I'm just like, put up points where if another quarterback gets hot for a while, you're not in trouble. I guess that's my only concern. But the Steelers will beat the Browns. They got to. I mean, come on. So
TJ always comes with licking his chops for the Browns. So he'll be
TJ and Highsmith doing what he's doing, and Minka in the back there. Oh man, it's a daunting defense to try to have to face. Honestly, there's a lot going right with the Steelers defense right now, and if the Browns aren't able to run, and the history of the Browns is that they don't even try, then the only thing that's left is defending Amari Cooper.
Well, and here's the other thing, too. And, again, we're not sure exactly how the NFL is going to handle this final week of the year. The Bills-Patriots game, I mean, Bills got to beat the Patriots if the Steelers are going to make the playoffs. But I see a path for all these scenarios to come true. I mean, the Bills, I think the Bills have something to play for. I mean, they're playing for a seed. I mean, the game means something. I think they're going to band together for their teammate, Damar Hamlin. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not sure if this means the Bills go in the Super Bowl, but I don't think the Bills are going to lay a dud. I think the Bills beat the Patriots. I watched that Patriots-Dolphins game last week. Man, Patriots are fraud, Dolphins are fraud. I mean, I think the Bills win that. And you look at the Jets-Dolphins game. Jets looked bad last week against Seattle, but it looks like Miami's starting Skylar Thompson at quarterback against the Jets. Yeah, I mean, Tua's still in injury protocol. They say he can't play, and Teddy Bridgewater is hurt too. And, Miami is still a pretty good team, but Miami can't win when Tua's not starting. I mean, the numbers are crazy.
But could be trying to throw against Sauce Gardner either, so.
Yeah, and Skylar Thompson's not your quarterback at all. So,
no.
I mean, it's possible.
I'd probably get Malik Willis over him.
Ooh. Yeah. Now it just got interesting.
Well, and here's the hard thing.
No, I'm just
most interesting because he doesn't play for that team.
I just enjoy bringing up Malik Willis because he's been so abysmal in his limited appearances so far.
Well, could we do a late season trade of Mitch Trubisky to Miami, just to see what
I won't
happens.
go that
Like
far.
just what?
Well,
See how many interceptions you could throw.
I mean, I think
Oh, come on, Mitch.
Malik Willis could still be okay. He's not ready this year by any means. But man, Tennessee, I mean, they're starting Josh Dobbs over Malik Willis.
Right? How about that?
That's
How
right.
about that? Somebody who wasn't even on your team and at the beginning of the season, and you're like, hey, this guy can save it.
Yeah, put your money on Jacksonville if you're in the betting. I'm not, but if you're in the betting, go for that. Yeah, I thought Steelers defense played really well. TJ Watt's numbers when he's playing, I know he's still not playing like he used to, but when he's out in the field, they play well. And I heard a quote after game from TJ. He says he feels like 100%. So if he's truly over his injury, that could be good.
I mean,
definitely against the Browns.
watching the end of that game, he may not have been actually making contact with Huntley, but he was certainly disrupting.
He was causing problems.
Yeah.
He was causing some problems. Yes. That's what you love to see.
Well, really, if you look at bottom line for the Steelers, we talked about this at the beginning of the year. If they could run the ball, play good defense, not turn the ball over, they're okay. And we thought maybe Mitch was that guy to do that at the beginning of the year. And I know it took Kenny Pickett a couple of games to warm up and play better and better. But right now, they got that
Or
formula.
not play against the Bills and the Eagles.
Well, that's the thing, too.
I'm not going to tell my mind to Steelers make the playoffs and they win a game, but hey, they beat the Bengals. I mean, if you could run the ball well, which you've been doing, don't turn the ball over and play good defense.
And apparently, if you can make it out of Cincinnati without 12 major injuries, that's also a thing.
Yeah, that was the issue with Steelers in the first game of the year. So, predictions. I don't know. I always like picking against the Steelers because they do well. Should I jinx them?
You do what you got to do, man.
You've got to stay true. Stay true.
Steelers 13.
Thank you.
Again, it won't happen. That's why I can't sports gamble. I mean, look at my picks during the year. I mean, I'll lose all my money. So,
if the Steelers win, that puts their final record at 9-8, does it not?
Yeah,
it does.
And I'm pretty sure one of the three of us predicted them to go 9-8 this year. I don't.
You want to talk about the games that you predicted that they would win?
The archives, but
you want to go back and look at the games that you predicted them to win, because these are the archives right here.
Well, let's look at the record. Just look at the record.
All right, the record is 8-8 right now. All three of us.
At this point.
You had him at you had him at 8-8 right now.
I did.
You did. Because we all picked a win for the last Browns game.
No, we need to forget that pass because Chris is now rooting for the Browns.
Yeah. Well, I actually blame the Steelers because they shouldn't have lost to the Patriots and what is it? Jets. That was a game they shouldn't have lost. And the Ravens game, the first Ravens game, they could have won. So they did what they needed to do to finish off the year 12-5 instead of 9-8. So
they shouldn't have lost that first game of the Browns.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
so they should be
lost that
13-4.
The first game against the Ravens, that was 2 points. That could have gone either way.
The first game was the Bills. They could have won. Should have won that.
They should have won that. Yeah. They lost by 173 points, but they could have won it if they just could have scored a couple more times.
Yeah. So, as we said, we spent our first 15 minutes talking about Damar Hamlin. Our prayers got to Damar Hamlin. Really cool to see Dan Orlowski. Pray for him on ESPN.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people who like one particular political party says ESPN hates God. Well, no. I mean, if they hated God, they would pull the guy off for praying. But good for him. So, any other thoughts on the Steelers, the NFL?
No.
You get tired of getting good.
Nothing else.
My Wi-Fi just crashed, so I don't know if you were waiting for me to say something.
All right. Well, for Joe and Paul, this is Chris. Thanks for checking out our Steelers show. Have a great night, everybody.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Mooney. Welcome to what is our new Hope Interrupted podcast based on the work from our book, Hope Interrupted, that I co-authored with my good friend Byron McCauley.
Hey, Jennifer, I'm looking forward to this podcast as much as I was looking forward to writing this book with you. We hope to interview some high impact folks as well as have a little fun.
We're going to cover stories of hope. To learn more about our podcast and our book, please visit www.hopeinterrupted.com.